Hi, this is Julie with a quick note before we begin. My guest today, Jen Kem, has a powerful new book out called Unicorn Team, filled with frameworks, strategies, and insights to help you decide whether, how, and with whom to move forward with a new idea. Her work inspired me to meet the moment we're in with a new weekly offering, Don't Freak Out Fridays, a power hour to stop doom scrolling, reconnect to ourselves, take meaningful action together, and plant seeds for rest and renewal over the weekend. If that calls to you, check the link in the show notes or follow me on Instagram at Mother's Quest Pod to learn more and join us. And now, on to the show, our season 10 debut with Jen Kem. Hello and welcome to season 10 of the Mother's Quest podcast. It's hard to believe it's been nearly a decade since I first opened the metaphorical door to Mother's Quest, sparked by the day two birds got trapped in my house and helped me realize it was time to stop staying stuck. It was time to say yes to Mother's Quest. As I reflect on all I've built and the new epic dreams I want to bring to life, I've been thinking about the who behind our what, the people who support us, complement our strengths, and help us realize our biggest visions. That's why it felt so aligned to start this season in conversation with Jen Kem, a values-driven mother and entrepreneur who models strategic leadership and collaboration, masterfully gathering the right people, who she calls unicorns, to help her reach her ambitious goals, all while being deeply present for her family. Named a top brand strategist by Forbes, Jen specializes in launching innovative ideas with high-performing teams. Her unicorn innovation model has supported brands like the Oprah Winfrey Network, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and Oracle, as well as New York Times bestselling authors and visionary entrepreneurs. In her newly released book, Unicorn Team, the 9 leadership types you need to launch your big ideas with speed and success, Jen shares an innovation playbook for building collaborative, values-aligned teams. It's a book not just meant to be read, but used again and again as a practical guide to help you stop building alone and start bringing your dream to life with the right support. Before I share more, I'm honored to introduce this episode's dedication from Alexandra Franzen, an editor and writing collaborator who played a key role in the creation of my self-published book, The Mother's Quest Inspiration Guide, through a course I took with her. Alexandra was also the writing unicorn Jen was seeking, the creative partner who helped bring Unicorn Team to life when the time was right. Here's Alexandra.
Hello, I'm Alexandra Franzen, and I'm honored to dedicate this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast to the one and only Jen Kem. So the first time I met Jen, it was almost 15 years ago, and I was teaching a writing workshop in the Bay Area of California. It was actually one of the very first workshops that I had ever taught. I was about 25 years old, and I was actually very nervous. And then Jen Kem walks into the room. She had signed up for my workshop. We had never met before. And I remember it was a crisp, cool day, and she walked in wearing this fabulous coat, and she had huge sunglasses, and she just looked so glamorous and confident and powerful. It honestly felt like Jennifer Lopez had just walked in the room. It was like, who is this celebrity in our midst? After that workshop, Jen and I stayed in touch for a really long time. We would exchange emails every now and then, and I followed her work and she followed mine, and we basically just admired one another from afar for many years. Then it was time for Jen to write her first book. And she told me she had gotten a book deal with a great publisher and asked if I could be her writing partner and help her shape the manuscript. The only problem was, at the time, I was pregnant and I was about to go on maternity leave. So I told her, yes, I want to do this project with you so much, but I need to wait until I get back from leave. And she said, okay. She said, you're the one I want, and you're worth waiting for. And Jen is really not someone who doles out praise sporadically or randomly. When she gives praise, it's because she really means it, and she has high standards. So I knew that this vote of confidence from her Well, it just really meant a lot to me. And we did end up creating that book together when the timing was right. And it's now a USA Today bestseller. Jen has sold close to 25,000 copies at the time of recording, which for those who don't work in the publishing industry is really good. Those are incredible numbers for a first-time author. Jen and I have gotten closer. She's become not just a colleague and a client, but really a dear friend. She inspires me to play bigger in my career and life. And she shows me that it's possible to be extremely ambitious in your career and be a terrific mom. She really models that. And I just love her. I love Jen. And Jen, if you're listening, I hope you enjoyed this little tribute to you. To everyone else listening, I know you're going to love this episode and hearing Jen's story and her insights. Jen, you are a remarkable human being, mother, and unicorn in this world. I'm so honored to know you.
Thank you, Alex, for weaving the tale of how you came to be part of Jen's unicorn team and for illustrating the power of creationship, that magical intersection of creativity and meaningful relationship. In this episode, Jen shares what it means to move through life and leadership in creationship, to surround ourselves with people who not only help you build, but help you become. Through stories of growing up in Hawaii alongside her Filipina matriarchs, to the wisdom she's integrating in what she calls her 5.0 upgrade, Jen invites us into a conversation about identity, intention, and interdependence. She shares the power of returning to the most essential parts of ourselves, of navigating what she calls ever-present pressure, friction, and noise, and of focusing our creative energy on the right hard thing. Through it all, she reminds us that our authentic presence is a powerful form of leadership, and that our boldest, most epic dreams are meant to be realized together. I'm Julie Neal, and this is Mother's Quest. We're going to start with the first question that I ask everyone, which is, tell me a little bit about your own childhood and the impact that your mother had in shaping who you are. And for you, I want to add the matriarchs in your life, because I know that your grandmother has also shaped you.
Oh, for sure. You know, my mother's name, I want to name her right up front. Her name is Anita, and she is definitely a big character in my entire story and continues to be a great character in my story. I grew up in a very tiny rural town where the main industry was sugarcane and pineapple production because my grandparents immigrated from the Philippines to pursue that opportunity to work in the fields. So my mom was born in Hawaii. And then, of course, then me and my siblings came from that. And I always knew, like, as a young person, that I didn't belong, if you will. I kind of was like, I loved, on one hand, the community, neighborhood, and family structure that was so based on taking care of each other. Like, you took care of each other, you took care of your neighbor. There was always an open door. I felt like my house where I grew up was this hub. And my grandmother, her name is Generosa, and her name is so well placed by her own mother because my grandmother is the ultimate beacon for generosity. Whenever I think, or when I'm feeling down or not feeling gratitude, I am asking, what would grandma do? Because she had so much capacity for love and generosity, even though she was breaking her back every day, working so hard. And so I grew up in that kind of environment. And as I said, I always felt different because from a cultural perspective, I'm Filipino, obviously. And it's a culture of hard work and not being too disruptive. Because if you're too disruptive, there's harm or there's danger. So it was kind of like, even though I was naturally curious, I'm naturally asking how things work. I'm always been like a little investigative journalist of anything I pursue. So when we think about my grandmother and we think about my grandmother was this big hearted, hardworking woman. My mother also extremely hardworking, and she has a huge heart, but she was also very stoic. My grandmother was very passionate and my mom was very stoic. For my mom, what she would tell me I think it's great that you're so curious and ambitious, but I want you to know that you're going to face a lot of friction being this person. And I didn't fully know what that meant. She said, we have a lot of things that we got to carry as women, and not everybody's going to understand you. And as long as you know that, then you'll be fine. But being my mom and being very overprotective, she preferred that I not face that friction. I think as mothers, we all don't want, right, our children to suffer or feel pain. And so my mom came from a place of real like tiger momming me, like really focusing on my education, focusing on making sure that I thought of getting a real solid and safe job. My mom's greatest dream for me was to like work for the US government. Like she thought that would be like the most perfect job. Because if you also know Filipinos in general, it is a stereotype, but it's true. Like if you go to the hospital, most times the nurses are going to be
Mhm.
Filipinos because we are a caregiving society. It's part of our culture. And many of us go into healthcare or medicine in that way, but also usually a nurse, not a doctor. And I even said, if I would go into medicine, I would be the doctor. And I would tell my mom that, but I couldn't, Julie, because I don't like blood. I would have never done well doing that. So that was kind of the environment that I grew up in and who I was. When you talk about knowing me, and we've now known each other for a few years now, the me that I am now is the me I was when I was younger. And it's in between, I would say around my teenage years till about age 35 is where I lost who I was. And so if you're seeing Jen Kem now, I'm really like 9-year-old Jen in a 51-year-old body, now, and really saying it's okay to be me. Like it's 100% okay to be me, to be a big thinker, a big hearted person, an ambitious person, a woman who is fiercely protective of my babies, my 3 kids. I have 2 grown daughters. One's 28, and one's going to be 23 in a couple weeks. Then I have a 10-year-old son. And for me, growing up, I also knew, by the way, I wanted to be a mom. And I remember my mom saying, if you want that and you're that ambitious, you're also going to face a lot of pain because mothers don't get the support that they need. This was the stuff my mom would tell me. I'm telling you not to have children because trust me, from a cultural perspective, Filipinos want you to have more kids. They want you to keep the lineage going. That's kind of a
Yeah.
cultural thing. But my mom said, just know it might be even better, Jen, if you got good, well-paying job and found a rich husband. I think if my mom were listening, she used to get triggered or upset if I would share stuff like that. But this is not me desecrating my mom's message. I understand it now because I'm a mom, because I'm a grown woman now. And looking back, I understand why she wanted to protect me from what women do experience as mothers. And even in a pursuit of what you call an epic life, Julie,
Hmm.
an epic can be whatever we design it to be, right?
Right.
If I'm going to design my epic life, then I have to know what comes with it. And I learned that early, and I used to resent it when I was younger. I used to be like, you're trying to keep me down. You don't really see me. You don't understand me. We used to get into a lot of verbal beefs about this stuff. I felt deeply misunderstood and deeply disconnected from the person I had a vision for and the person that I felt my mom would love more. And between about 15 and 35, that's a good 20 years, it was me having kids, pursuing a career. And the whole time I felt like I still had to have a mask on. And so growing up, I felt like I was living a duality life, if you will, and felt like in order to be loved by all the people I cared about, that I needed to be that. So yeah, so I think that's the thing. And there's actually a really interesting stat. I don't know if Julie, if you've seen it, but girls specifically at about age 9, we kind of decide that the things that people tell us could be really true. And so it's a really important age because if you don't have the context, and maybe even if your parents, your parent figures don't have the context to give you, it can actually really screw you up for a while. But I always knew I wanted to be a mom. And even with the friction that I described with my mom versus like, I always felt my grandma had a place for me. But the funny thing is, I've learned that you make the person who has made you feel the most loved and doesn't challenge you to be the one who's the hero. And the one that gives you some challenge is the villain.
Mm.
And neither of them were either of those things. Right. And it was that they're coming from their perspective because each one of us has our own thing. I hope that gave you enough to play with.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And one of the things I'm thinking about, the core premise of Mother's Quest is this idea that we can model for our kids and inspire them, but also that our kids can inspire us to learn and grow. It's this reciprocity. And it makes me so curious to know what impact your example now has had on your own mom.
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's so true because back to even when we talk about the matriarchy and there's this idea of passing down, but there's not as much of that. What is the reflection of your child teaching you? And I think, I've always said my kids are definitely like some of my biggest teachers. They taught me how to even get disciplined, right? Because they're good anchors for that, right? So to answer the question about my mom specifically, I think what my mom has realized, and we have such a great relationship now. And again, I won't say it was like horrible. I just want to say that it was definitely combative for a while because I just felt so misunderstood. And because I'm the black sheep or the unicorn, if you will, of the
Mm,
family, that was really questioning the status quo thinking of our culture and being very proud of my ethnic heritage at the same time, but asking how can we show up differently if we need to, or how can we be accepting of other perspectives. I think that's the biggest thing that's happened with my mom over the course of the years. I will say having my own kids changed our relationship very deeply because it's funny. It was so interesting to see my mom now become my grandmother for my kids in the way
oh,
that my
well.
grandmother was for me. And I was jealous of how much doting, and I felt like she was so supportive of them, whereas I felt like she was always skeptical and criticizing my moves. And I started to go, wait a minute, holy crap. That's how my mom felt about my grandma and me. Like she felt resentful, probably because she used to say to me, you think you got it great with your grandma, but she made us work. She made us, all these things. And so when she became a grandmother, my mother, when I had my first kid, Michaela, when I saw her at first, I got to say, I was a little jealous. It was this awareness of, oh, this is a thing that we get to decide. We're first of all aware. And number two, that what if we weren't jealous? What if we were just, whoa, this is kind of a passage thing? Like it's a rite of passage. It's like she's passing the baton to me and saying, I don't want to work as hard to raise these kids. That's your job, Jen, to raise these kids. My job is to love them and show them that they have a safe place to land. And so I think that what I've also taught my mom is that even though I was a very different mom than she was, she admires the way that I parent. And she's so happy that even with our former disconnects, she's just proud of me. She likes my big mouth now. She's kind of like, I always knew you had a big mouth. And she could say it like that and say, Jen, I always knew you had a big mouth. I was just worried about who would treat you poorly. I didn't mind that you had a big mouth. And so her being able to now say it like that, instead of it feeling like, oh, I have a big mouth and I'm going to be in trouble because of it, it's more like, Jen, I like that you speak your truth. I like that you're showing us a different way. I'm scared that the world won't accept you. Oh my gosh, I'm getting a little emotional saying that out loud because I
Yeah.
think it's back to my mom and I are the exact same age apart as my first daughter and I. So it's kind of like that knowing, because when you're in your early 20s and you have a kid, you don't know what you're doing. Your prefrontal cortex is still growing. And so I think what my mom would say, we battled a lot in my teenage years and my college years. And sometimes she still triggers the heck out of me, to be honest with you. And she'll tell you the same. I trigger the ish out of her too. But we really love each other. We also realize you can love each other. And sometimes you're just not going to like what you're up to or like what you say, but that doesn't mean you don't love each other and that there's so much value in that. Yeah, that's what I would say.
This is also powerful. I'm already having my curious questions for you about your own mothering and particularly of Michaela, who I've
Mhm.
also met, and I've been able to see your beautiful dynamic with one another. But I want to share a little bit more about what it means to live an epic life and then introduce the epic guideposts, which we're going to delve into. So for me, before a big milestone birthday of my own, before I turned 45, I had this moment of saying yes to myself and having a personal reclamation after years of feeling like I had lost myself in motherhood. And I had this idea. First of all, I felt like I was on a quest. How could I show up for my kids? My oldest was diagnosed with autism. before he turned 2. So very early on in my motherhood journey, I was in a major advocacy role. And then I had 5.5 years of infertility before I had my second child, who went on to have other extra needs of his own. And I also was a mission driven person, and I knew I was here to make a difference. And I felt like I had been kind of swallowed up whole by motherhood. So on the eve of this 45th birthday, and after a spiritual experience that I had when 2 birds were trapped in my house, which became a metaphor for how I was feeling, I said, I'm no longer going to sit on this idea that I've had and this dream of Mother's Quest. And I said yes to myself. And when I tried to articulate what it was about living my version of an epic life, being the author of my story and the hero of my own journey in a way that resonated for me, not somebody else's version. It holds this larger metaphorical meaning. But then also, I felt like I wanted to drill down into the things that I felt would help me live that kind of life when I was raising my kids. And one day, the kitchen table with a napkin came out with these epic guideposts. So E is about engaging mindfully with my children. P is passionate and purposeful impact. I is about investing in myself, and C is connected to a strong support network. And every one of my beautiful interviews on the podcast, I get to hear from these incredible women how these guideposts show up in your life. First, before we delve more into how you engage with your kids, big picture, Gen 5.0, what is it you feel like you are most on a quest for now? What is living your epic life mean for you?
For me, my word for the decade, I don't do words for the year. I do kind of like, what's the kind of theme I want to live? Really, when I was 49, knowing I was going into 50, and I had a big party on my 49th birthday instead of my 50th on purpose. It was like, this is a wrap up of my 40s. And now I want to be in reflection going into this decade. And the word that really popped into my mind and has really been the guidepost for me right now is creationship.
Mm,
So I wanted to be in a space where, number one, I could create my next best work and do it in a way that shared both my expertise and my experience, but also what I'm curious about and how I think. And so that's why pursuing life as now an author, a speaker, somebody who wants to help people with frameworks of how to live their own values driven life. That was really important to me. And then I realized too is that I didn't want to do it alone. And
hmm
so that's what the creation ship part is, like creativity plus relationship. And I wanted to be and seek more depth around the relationships in my life in all the ways, my family, my friends, my clients. I wanted to develop and cultivate fruitful friendship and relationship. And that's been hard for me. And I think people will say, really? Because you seem like you're such a connector. And I said, I don't see myself as a connector. I see myself as deeply desiring to be connected. And in order for me to be that, I needed to shape that. And I wanted to be more deeply connected to this matriarchal energy of women because I really believe in us. And I believe that the world needs us more than ever. They've been needing us more than ever. We need ourselves more than ever. And especially if you're navigating motherhood, because there's just so much joy and friction that
hmm
comes with it. And so for me, that's kind of my word that helps me navigate how I want my life to unfold these next few years. And so I'm seeking that, to use the word quest. I'm exploring that. How can I be more of that with people? How can I be in relationship to that with more people? And I'm already noticing even how me using that just as an anchor idea that helps me stay focused has really helped even call in and call forward the right, what I call unicorns, right? The rare, my acronym for unicorns is being as rare as possible. And rare stands for really awkward, really excellent. And
mm,
so I'm looking for my really awkward, really excellent people because that's who I am. People I think sometimes don't realize. They're just like, oh, you're so confident. You're so this and that. I'm like, actually, I'm really a cozy introvert that really likes to be in deep conversation with people. And I do enjoy sharing my wisdom. And that's not an extroverted or introverted thing. That's just something that it's fun for me. Like it's fun for me to gather people I think of myself as good at connection. I think of myself as this is something I need so deeply for me. And I'm so glad we can all benefit from it because I think that when we design like I love your pillars, the E.P.I.C, it's like, if we're going to design our own epic life, we have to first start with us, period. Because we know that the other people will benefit, whether it's your sons or my kids, the people who are part of my ecosystem. So yeah, so creationship for me and seeing how that goes and really truly going all in on authoring and speaking and contributing in that way. It also feels scary. But just to
Mm,
be clear, it feels scary because again, it's like it's so weird how tender it feels. Like we have to be careful that as we evolve our identities, that we don't become calcified in them. And it's easy to become calcified. I love crystals, so like
And I love a good metaphor, so I'm loving this.
right, right. It's like the identity becomes so static or calcified that breaking out of it feels like a loss, or breaking out of it feels like fearful. And so honoring our emotions in that journey is really important, but also knowing like that's what's cool about who we are as human beings is that our identities get to evolve. And as I said, actually, like I'm in a period, another word I'm using a lot is exfoliation. And what I mean by that is when I said that 51-year-old Jen is really just trying to live what 9-year-old Jen's vision for her life was in that big, expansive way and very excitable. Like I'm getting goosebumps because of this vision I have. For me, it's like instead of trying to add more, what do I need to exfoliate so I can get to the pure baby skin that I had at 9 years old before I slather more cream on it? Because identity shifting, I feel like, and when I meet a lot of other fellow ambitious women who have, or moms, et cetera, too, it's like we need to exfoliate more. And that's just even for a metaphor for women and aging. Like we're not even allowed to age. We're not allowed to emote. We're not allowed to like shift what we want to become. It's all this pressure that we're carrying from society. Like we've been socialized this way. So that's another word that's kind of just a check-in word when I'm feeling like, ooh, things are not feeling right. And is it not feeling right just because it's normal to not feel right because I'm nervous because I'm making a change? Or is it just something I need to exfoliate?
Yeah. What are
You
you
know?
releasing
Yeah.
as you step forward into this next chapter?
Yeah.
A word that's been coming up for me as I'm thinking about all the narrative strands you've been sharing is this reminder about how we live and learn on a spiral. It's not a straight line. And sometimes it feels like we're going backwards and we're like in familiar territory, but we're not the same people we were before. And sometimes it's like on one of the spiral rounds, we're actually moving further from what feels like our core selves and our truth. And I love this idea of you returning back to the essence and the spirit of who you were at 9 years old. But obviously, you have all the life experience and all the wisdom. You're not also the same exact as the 9-year-old. So it's just your story is really powerful. And I'm appreciating all of the reflection and thoughtfulness that you've brought to it.
Exactly. I think that that's why, and even I talk about going back to 9-year-old Jen, I want to borrow the belief she had in her future as I'm navigating the next identity. And then also trusting that because of what my earned experience looks like, that no matter what, everything's going to be great. It's going to be fine and it's perfect how it's unfolding. So, yeah, knowing yourself and these reflection things that we're talking about, because Julie, even by your pillars, those are ways that you reflect on your own as you're navigating. I think every woman listening, I invite you to whether you're using the E.P.I.C as a useful framework to go, let me use it as a way to be Socratic to myself. When we think about being a Socratic questioner, right? It's used a lot in coaching is like asking yourself more questions and doing it from a place of non-judgment, feeling like, oh, am I an indecisive person? It's more just like doing yourself a good and going, oh, is this what I really want? What filters are you using? And I think it's so important to use those type of filters to have self-awareness. Because at the end of the day, before you can lead others in anything, and I'm not talking about even in a business, I'm talking about like even be a leader in your family alongside your spouse or be a leader in anything you do, you have to lead yourself. Like the greatest investment in leadership you want to do is not in the outside world, it's in the inside world, your inside world, and exploring that.
Let's move into the epic guideposts. I would love to hear when you think about how Gen 5.0 is engaging mindfully with your children. What is one core lesson or one way of being that you bring to your relationships with your kids?
It would be presence, and that's PRENSENC. So presence. One thing being an ambitious woman, having multiple businesses, and frankly, now kids in their own seasons of life, right? Michaela is completely been on her own for a long time, has lived on her own since she went to college. Jordan is in her last year of school, and then Noah's in fourth grade. And so each one of them has different needs and desires, and so do I. And so one of my things that I firmly stand on is presence. So, meaning when we have time put aside for us, it is their time and it is my time with them. And that outside of that, we're all living our autonomous desires. I want my kids to know I got their back for everything. And also, I want them to know that I'm not available for everything. But when we're together in any form, whether it's on the phone or in person, I'm 100% focused in my relationship on them.
And the curiosity I had from earlier, do you notice that you bring a different kind of presence to the relationship with your kids and maybe especially your oldest daughter as a result of the experience you had with your own mom?
For sure. Because I was so resentful because my mom was the only mom in my friend group growing up that had to work because my parents got divorced. And my mom was the first to get divorced, which had a lot of shame for her because back to culture, it's just not a thing. You don't get divorced. Being a kid, you don't know what your parents are going through really. Part of their job is not to also vomit on you as a kid, at least you hope not, right? And bring you into these adult conversations. But I remember like I always felt resentful that all my friends, their moms would pick them up from school or bring them lunch at lunchtime. And my mom had to go to work. And I came home to my grandma. And then my mom would come home from work and she was exhausted. You know, she was commuting to work, giving her all at work, coming home at 6, barely had time to cook. And so I didn't really get to talk to my mom until the weekends. And she never talked about it with us because she just kind of got focused. So that's why that's one thing that really for me, I was like, look, I also don't want to become or abandon myself for my kids, similar to that come to awakening that you mentioned that you had, Julie. So what I realized early was if I tell my kids, look, I'm just letting you know I am going to disappoint you because we are living in a world where not just that I have to work, but I actually like to work. I think that was another thing. I was like, I actually like having a career and I want you all to have the same desires. And it was because early on I told them that. That's what I would have wanted my mom to tell me, is my point. And I think we're always seeking what we want with the void, the void that we had or we perceived as having. And my mom would have never said that to me. She would have said, I'm just working and that's it. I was like, look, I actually have to work. I like to work. Here's my commitment to you, right? My
Yeah.
commitment is I will, when we are together and it is on the calendar, that I am committed to being present with you in that moment. Sometimes I won't be able to come to all your games because I have to travel for business. A lot of people say to me, that's so admirable. And I go, I gotta let you guys know I wasn't doing it to be admirable. I truly was doing it for my own self preservation and trying so hard to just be 1% more than what I wish I had, even though I know my mom didn't do anything. I was just like, what would have wanted? And that goes back to me asking myself first and realizing that no one has to lose here if we communicate. So yeah, I know we haven't got to the PIC yet, so I want to make sure we keep you.
It's all so good. I'm really appreciating that you talked with your kids about what was meaningful to you, about the work you do in the world. And
Mhm.
we make a difference being a mother. And there's also a bigger difference we want to make beyond our family. And that brings us to the P. You have this amazing book out, Unicorn Team. There's so much in there about impact, but particularly the framework that you offer for thinking about these ideas that we have that may change the world and making sure we have the right people alongside us to make that possible. Can you share a little bit in a nutshell? And then, of course, we're going to encourage everybody to go and get the book. And I think you have links as well of PDFs that may be available, but share in a nutshell what is important to you about this model that you've brought out through Unicorn Team.
Well, on the surface, it's a book about how to get your ideas and bring them to life. And so some people could even call that a business book, right? Where it's kind of like, oh, okay, I have a new idea and I want to bring it to market. But what it really is my personal framework for organizing everything we've even talked about up until this point. I tell people all the time that I am also divorced from Michaela and Jordan's father. And I felt very strongly that even if we were no longer together, that I wanted our children to feel like they could have two parents. And so that's why I stayed in Hawaii because he wasn't ever going to leave there and he still lives there, even though I was the one that would have to get on planes, trains, and automobiles to do things. And my point is that I knew that if I was going to get remarried, I could not have a partner where that level of toleration that I had and abandoned myself in could be again. I was like, I'm looking for unicorns. I've kissed a lot of donkeys. And so it's funny because I tell people the framework in the book even helped me decide if my husband was the one for me and from a place of true, pure objectivity and also feeling both. They're both there. So I say, like, the book was written, and I fought really hard for this book to get written first because I got rejected 70 times by publishers for this book. They really wanted me to write a book on messaging and identity. And I said, this book is more important right now because if people understood that if they had the right people, the who is more important than the how or the what. And in every season of your life and with every idea you have, and you're designing your own epic life, whatever Jen Kem 6.0 is 9 years from now, requires sometimes different people. And the book is a playbook for that. Before you can innovate anything, you got to reimagine yourself first. That's really what the book is about. I've heard from people, they're like, oh my gosh, this is helping me market my product better. And then they're like, but at the same time, I told my husband, let's sit down at the table. And I realized, oh my gosh, like I see why things work for us. And I also see when we're not working out, we could use the communication tools in this book to be a better team for our family together, to be a better parent team, to share with the kids, to be like, hey, this is the season we're in now, folks. How are we going to navigate it together? I mean, it's just, you can use it for so many different things.
Yeah. I mean, as you're saying that, like, I can absolutely see how I could take every epic guidepost in my life through the framework.
Mm-hmm.
And I also see what you're saying about it causes you to pause and really think about, do I need a shift? In reality, I feel like it was making me emotional. I told you this morning I was in the sauna on the phone, walking through the framework with somebody who is on my team, and just realizing how many times I felt like I abandoned truly investing in an idea or making sure I had the right people. And I feel like I have this various things I've created connected to this really important vision that still feels real, but where I did not maybe get the right people in place or make the right investments and really mobilize it in a way to bring
Mm-hmm.
it to the world in as full a way as it could be. So thank you for it's a real mirror. And then it can absolutely, I can see, be a roadmap for action.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're seeing that because that was the goal. I told people I wrote this book not just so that people would read it and share it, but actually use it and use it often. I wanted to be the most tattered book on your desk so that you're constantly referring back to it because it's there for you. It's not there for me, Jen Kem, the author. I wanted to be able to write this book because people were paying me hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. And I was like, what if I could put the way my brain works into a book, the way my heart works into a book? And that's what this book really is. It really is that.
And I heard you refer to it too in an interview, I think, as a textbook. And I
Mm-hmm.
definitely have that feeling. This actually feels like a textbook that I want to have with me regularly on my bedside table and on my desk. Well, let's move into the I guideposts about investing in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And what is feeling most resonant for you right now about either the lessons that you've learned or the commitment that you're making to your own growth and development?
Yeah. So investing in myself right now is still tied to that word creationship. And so I want to be in communities where I feel like there can be such juicy reciprocity, but not transactional reciprocity. I want to be in places where, frankly, I want to be able to speak on more stages and I want to share this framework with as many people as possible. So when we talk about investing in myself, me understanding that that's how I want to play in the world and also be seen. So I'm investing in communities where I feel like that's what's most possible. Literally, like whether it's a group where big thinking is happening, I'm also investing in platforms where I feel like I can make the most impact with this work. So, for example, like I've gone all in on LinkedIn and YouTube as my two platforms that I have fun creating content on
Mm.
and really not caring much about the rest. People will say, "Oh, but I still see you on Instagram. I still see you on Facebook." I go, "Yeah, I'm over there because I have a system in place to make sure that I'm publishing content over there." But in terms of my deep thoughts and then being in conversation, those are the two platforms that I'm really invested in. And that's it. It sounds like those are both business things. But what's interesting is I tell people all the time, and even my kids understand this, is like I truly enjoy talking about the work I do. It lights me up. I always tell people I'm not very good at many things, honestly. I have a master gift, and that is that I can smell the money. Anything I touch turns to gold. That's not my words. Those are clients who've told me that. I'm naturally good at it because that's what I'm naturally good at. I couldn't play an instrument. I'm not very athletic. I love sports, but I'm not athletic. So I tell people, I truly believe that God, the creator, whatever, the higher power you believe in, I believe I was just made like this. So therefore, I just want to be more of this. And so I'm only investing in things where that can be shared and generative.
I think in all my interviews, I have over 100 now. I'm not sure anyone has ever named a platform as a way they invest in themselves.
Mm.
And what I'm really appreciating about that is I actually do spend a lot of time on Facebook, and some of that is not fulfilling. But there's a tremendous amount of what I'm able to do on that platform that's about connection, that's about where I can name the questions I'm grappling with and have really insightful responses from people and from a community of people that have grown over the years who I deeply respect. I'm really looking at this in a new way from your share about that.
Oh,
Very
great.
interesting. All right, we're at the last guidepost C, and this stands for connected to a strong support network. And there's obviously so much about the Unicorn Team book, which is about creating the right community. Tell me a little bit about the lessons that Unicorn Team has for us about building community to bring our epic lives and the ideas that matter to us forward.
I talk about the concept of pressure, friction, and noise in the book, that we're all facing pressure, friction, and noise daily. And I think more than ever, right? Because the world is very noisy. And if you really want to create a community of connectedness, you have to be around as much healthy pressure, friction, and noise instead of unhealthy pressure, friction, and noise. I call them the PFNs. So I'm always evaluating like, what's the climate of this group that I'm in or this platform I'm on? Because it affects me. And if I'm going to feel pressure, friction, and noise, then I want to be in the healthy awareness of it. Because anything new that you want to do requires pressure, friction, and noise. Anything new. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything that doesn't have pressure, friction, and noise, or if somebody says there isn't, I have a big side eye on. I'm like, yeah, that's funny. Just like entrepreneurship, just like motherhood, right? Let's be the perfect mom. Let's be the like most perfect entrepreneur or perfect friend, right? All of that is a setup, right? It's like we're being set up to fail. And in the book, I ask you to really look at that. Like, can you accept that pressure, friction, and noise is part of growth? And nature teaches us that. In fact, I always say like nature makes things look natural, but actually there's a lot of violence that happens for a blade of grass to poke through. And if you were to look at it at a molecular level, go watch a video on YouTube about what it takes for a blade of grass to pop through. But we just take it for granted. So for us to be so egotistical as humans to think that that's not required for us to live and thrive and grow forward, we're conning ourselves. And so the first thing you need to do, because for me, integrity looks like keeping my word to myself more than I even keep to others. Because if I can keep my word to myself, if the tongue in my mouth matches the tongue in my shoe, I can sleep at night. And I feel like we are being taught at a very surface level how to live. And I'm like, actually, living is deep work and we should treat it like that. And what a privilege to have the opportunity to do that. So even with my book, as I said, like I use my book as an example of how you can stay firm on what you really feel is the most important thing to share. Even if other people don't get it, it doesn't really matter because they will. They will get it. The more that you can enroll community around it, which I got to really try that on. That's what I also like about a book launch is you get to try that on and you get to bring people with you. And It's how I learned to get over my resentment of being misunderstood and instead go, the only way I can be understood is if I actually show people the way. And the unicorns that are right for the season will show up, and the ones that aren't, that's okay because humans are hard. Humans are the epitome of pressure, friction, and noise, right? And unfortunately, we have such a big ego. The difference between us and all other animals and natural things is that we think too much. That's what happens. For me to be connected to others, I got to be connected to myself. That's ultimately it. And I need to accept that even being connected to others takes work, right? It takes effort. If we're going to effort, let's effort on the right things. Let's effort on working on the right hard things instead of the wrong hard things. It's the wrong hard things that are really messing us up. Those are the things that are unhealthy, pressure, friction, and noise. But the right hard things, those are the things to invest in. Those are the things to put your time and your energy and your money towards. And that's how I live my life. And that's why I'm so clear. I'm not perfect. I make bad decisions. In fact, just this past week, I made some decisions that I felt like, gosh, I knew better because I have this framework. But that's my point. What's cool is I can quickly even know why I did it and own it and then go work it out with my therapist to be like, like, why am I still like reverting to these habits that aren't supporting what I want? Like that's a unicorn. My therapist is a unicorn in my unicorn team. I need somebody that I can vomit out my fears to so that I'm not vomiting on my kids or my team. And so a lot of times we think we can't afford it or we don't have time for it. I'm like, do you really know what you really should have? Because that's why we're causing chaos in our lives. And I want peace.
Ooh, now we are at the opportunity for you to give me and anyone else listening an invitation related to the themes that we're talking about. I must admit, I was looking at your book and I was feeling very compelled by the invitation at the end, a 3, 2, 1 win through the
Mm-hmm.
unicorn sprint. So if that feels good, you could walk us through that. And I also want to know what's feeling most resonant for you right now.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, when I think about even Julie, what you're up to and this podcast and the audience that's listening, I want you to know that the three parts of my book are based on visionize, strategize, and mobilize. So a lot of us are told vision, vision, vision. And vision it's beautiful, right? We really cultivate and focus on vision. But without strategy and without mobilization, the vision never comes alive. And for strategy and mobilization to come alive, you need unicorns. You need the right unicorns. And my invitation is let me be your unicorn using this book. Let me be a unicorn on your team. That's my invitation. By my offer to you is this book is literally me in your pocket. And that 3, 2, 1 sprint at the end is a quick way for you to pursue a juicy idea that you have in 100 days or less so that you can really try it on. Because the thing is, nothing happens overnight, but when it does, it feels like it to everyone else, right? And so, what I hope you do is you take your idea, you try it on for 100 days, and then you reflect and you say, okay, whoa, like what went well? What didn't? And do I understand why it didn't? Do I understand that maybe it was not the right, let's say, person helping me execute this? Or was it actually just that, frankly, the idea that I have, it's just not time for it now? Because a lot of people hang on to their ideas for way too long because they're attached to their ideas. And my offer to you is to start to use this book to think like I would think. Because if what I said earlier, where like I can naturally smell the money and the things that I do turn to gold, it's because I use this book literally to do everything I do. Everything I do, I use this book as a guidepost for me. It's a way for me to sort quickly, determine quickly, and then really deepen under what matters. So that's my invitation. Use this book and use me in this way to get all your epic life dreams to come true.
I love that. We will include links in all the good ways. You also helped me to realize that your audiobook is available if you are a Spotify premium user. It is
Yeah,
right there waiting for you.
it's free. Yeah.
So many different ways to experience hearing your voice and taking in your wisdom. I'm also part of a leadership book club with Mary Grace Gardner, and you're going to be coming live. So we'll include a link to that as well if people want to have the experience of being able to be physically in your presence. on a Zoom call. It's an honor to be able to help more people learn about this. This is the final part of the episode. We always end with acknowledgments and takeaways. So anything that is coming into clearer focus for you, I'll start and then I'll pass it on to you. I want to acknowledge you. I know I started with some acknowledgments, but now it's just even more evident after everything you shared about what a thoughtful, reflective person you are on your life journey, how values driven you are, and how one of those values is being the most true to yourself. And I really appreciate that example that you provide, not only to your kids, but to all of us who learn from you. And I'm also really feeling the sense of your grandmother's spirit, generosa, your deep generosity, and sharing so freely. So I'm leaving with all of those things. What's feeling a little bit more clear to you as we close this conversation?
Well, I just want to acknowledge, Julie, that you're such a great space holder and, that your own curiosity, yet guided way of pulling out my ability to, in your words, generously give. You make it easy to be that because you hold a space for that. I want us as women to feel free to be curious, is my point, because sometimes people take curiosity as questioning their motives or questioning themselves. And honestly, the more curious you are and around people who love that about you, the better in my mind. So thank you for being the curious person that you are, because it helps me meet the curious person that I am.
Thank you. Taking that in fully. In the spirit of exfoliation, yeah, I think when we can be in this curious space, we can peel back the layers, help all of us get closer to what is really mattering.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for coming along with me on this episode of the Mother's Quest podcast. I hope this conversation sparked something that will help you live your epic life. If you'd like to get show notes and learn more about how to join the Mother's Quest community, visit mothersquest.com. And while you're there, I would love it if you would follow the prompts to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and help us to spread the word. I want to end with some words to help light the way on your quest. Seize the day, love your people, honor your gifts. Until next time.